Let's take a look at the muscles of the upper extremity. This muscle right here is the deltoid. If I take the deltoid muscle off, we can look at muscles around the scapula. Here is the anterior aspect of the scapula, and in here we have the subscapularis. If I flip it around to the posterior side, here is the spine of the scapula, and so above it we have the supraspinatus, and below it we have the infraspinatus. Just below that we have two teres muscles. We have the teres minor and the teres major. Usually when we have a minor and a major, the minor is the one above the major. Then if we move into the arm, right here we have the biceps brachii. The name biceps, it has two heads. If we go in medially from the biceps brachii, we have the Brachioradialis. If we go lateral to the biceps brachii over here, we have the Brachialis. If I flip it around to the posterior, on the posterior aspect of the arm, we have the triceps, which, for the name triceps, there are three heads, here, here, and here. Next, we'll move into the forearm. So the most obvious muscle in the forearm, if you look down at your own forearm, is this muscle right here. This is the Brachioradialis because it starts up in the brachium and then it winds alongside the radius. So Brachioradialis. Then we're going to get into the posterior aspect of the forearm, which is going to be made up of mostly extensor muscles. We do also have pronators and supinators in the forearm, but mostly on the posterior we have extensors, and mostly on the anterior we have flexors. So this muscle right here is the extensor Carpi Radialis Longus. This one here, extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis. Moving here, we have a bundle of muscle bellies. This is the extensor Digitorum. And again, going to digits 2 through 5. If we go over here to the small muscle belly, we can trace it up underneath the retinaculum and into the 5th digit. This muscle is the extensor digiti minimi. Now we're on the ulnar side, or the pinky side. So this is the extensor Carpi Ulnaris. And then if we move up here towards the tip of the elbow, this is the Anconius. So again, first we looked at the Brachioradialis. Then moving into the posterior aspect, we have the extensor Carpi Radialis Longus, extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis, extensor Digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor Carpi Ulnaris, and Anconius. We'll move into the anterior aspect of the forearm, and we'll actually start with a pronator muscle, and that muscle is right here, and that is the pronator teres. If we go over to this muscle, we're on the flexor side. This is also the thumb side or the radial side. So this is the flexor Carpi Radialis. If we move to this muscle belly, this is the Palmaris Longus, and not everyone has one of these muscles. And what gives it away in the cadaver is if you trace down its tendon, it's going to develop into a broad, flattened sheet called an aponeurosis. And basically it's going to tighten the skin of the palm of your hand. If we go to the ulnar aspect, or the pinky aspect, we have another flexor. This is the Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. Now if we look alongside the Palmaris Longus here, we can see some muscle bellies here and here. If this was a real cadaver, I would pull some of this out of the way and pull these muscle bellies out. This is the Flexor Digitorum Superficialis. It's actually one of two digitorum groups on the flexor side of the forearm. So then if I pull this layer off, and then underneath we can see the Flexor Digitorum Profundus. If we look over here, we have a muscle going to the thumb, and this is the Flexor Palmaris Longus. And then we have one other muscle down here. This is another pronator muscle, and this is the Pronator Quadratus. So this is the more distal pronator muscle. The pronator teres, remember we viewed right here. If we go back to the posterior side, we'll look at the deep muscles on this aspect now. In this region, we have a muscle right here, and this muscle supinates, so it is called the supinator. Then we have three muscles going to the thumb. The model doesn't label the one in the middle, but we're going to label it. This first muscle, the proximal one, we have the abductor Palmaris Longus. Then we have the extensor Palmaris brevis. And then we have the extensor Palmaris Longus. So it helps you to remember these. This is kind of like a sandwich with the bread in the middle, or brevis in the middle. So abductor Palmaris Longus, extensor Palmaris brevis, extensor Palmaris Longus, and then we also have another extensor right here, and that is going up to the index finger, so that is the extensor indicus. Next, we'll look at some thumb muscles. Right here, we have the opponens pallicus. Right here, we have the abductor Palmaris brevis. And if we go to the palmar aspect of the hand, right up here, we have the flexor Palmaris brevis. If we go into the thumb web right here, if this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the thumb in. So this is the adductor Palmaris. And then right here, along the side of the fifth digit, we have the abductor, abductor, digiti minimi.